And so for another, thank you, just for another water-related example, I have an example for you all that's related to the World Bank, which is handy dandy because this week is their annual spring meetings. And it's a new example. So at this point, we have a bit of concrete and a bit of theoretical for you. But basically, I'm going to talk about the 2030 Water Resources Group. This is essentially a corporate-led trade association, which is now housed within the IFC and states as its own nominal objective transforming the water sector. And the WRG, as I'll call it, is creating and establishing financial metrics as a basis for water governance. So when Antonio talks about the steps needed for financialization to fabricate a commodity, to build a market, and to create scarcity. In fact, I think we can see all three of these taking place with the Water Resources Group. So let me just take a step back. In terms of water, corporations for years now have been trumping up the ideas about water scarcity, and in part so that they can help to create this market. And certainly, as many of you know, there's also many different types of attempts afoot to commodify water, and the Water Resources Group in particular does this. So let me just give you a quick background on the history. The Water Resources Group was officially established inside the bank in October of 2011 with funding from the IFC, and its chair is the Nestle chairman, Peter Brabeck-Letmathe. And it aims to grow into a standalone entity at some point in the future and have 10 or more countries by 2013 that it's working in collaboration with. To be eligible for support from the WRG, all projects must provide for at least one partner from the private sector, and that private sector has to not simply be a charitable funder but also be part of the operation. So there has to be substantial participation by the private sector in the water project. And the IFC is committed to $1 billion per year to keep this running in seed money. The WRG functions in kind of a set of three phases. So it has a diagnostic, and it's created a whole, in fact, there was a report that came out earlier that they're now using as a tool for that diagnostic. So they have a set of economic metrics that they use to do a diagnostic of the water situation in the country. And then, so that's the first phase, that's the analysis, and their acronym is ACT. And then the second phase is convening networks to build in-country capacity. So then they liaison with governments, they get together groups of ministers, and they, the Water Resources Group, then work with the ministers to implement their recommendations based on that analysis. And then they transform, which is the T of the ACT, the water policies. So government partners now include Jordan, Mexico, the state of Karnataka in India, South Africa, Mongolia, and the Shaanxi province in China. And there are conversations ongoing with other governments. So the question is then, how is this an example of financialization? Well, the Water Resources Group essentially, well, first of all, it facilitates access to policymakers by transnational corporations that are interested in financializing water. So, for instance, Nestle is a major proponent of water trading. And this is reflected in the recommendations and analyses that the Water Resources Group puts forward. So, as I said, they have economic metrics for fully commodifying water and for evaluating water and the allocation of water based on economic productivity. So you can imagine that they're putting more value on economically productive uses of water rather than, say, household use or other uses that might not show up as economically profitable. They're also regularizing a system for setting the value of water, which, as Antonio said, is a very important basis for financializing the resource. And I don't have a whole lot of time left yet, so I think I'm just going to give you a really quick example from the case of Jordan. Some of the projects that they have, so they've convened and embedded WRG people in to work with the Ministry of Water in Jordan. And some of the things that they've recommended, they're generally, many of them are large kind of mega projects that are, as you might imagine, economically productive, like a desal project, a large water transportation facility like the one that Citigroup's I mentioned. There's also recommendations about agriculture, the need to move to high-value, water-efficient crops, and it makes you wonder when you look back at the transnational corporations that are within the WRG, what the motivations are for that, because there's Syngenta and a number of other large transnationals there. And there's a couple of other recommendations. I think that's about all I can get through in this time. But I think that we're still evaluating this case, but I think it presents a problematic trend of promoting financialization of water through World Bank-backed policy initiatives, and now initiatives that are growing into projects with governments. So there you go.